The Forsaken Bastion loomed in the darkness of space, a massive construct of steel and silence. Its hull bore the scars of ancient battles, a testament to humanity's last stand during the Salvator Wars. For over 2 centuries, the station drifted, abandoned, or so it was believed. The Keth Dominion fleet approached cautiously, their angular warships gliding through the void. The Bastion was positioned perfectly, an unclaimed fortress at the edge of contested space, a perfect forward operating base. Commander Vorker stood on the bridge of the Cathravius, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. No life signs, no defenses, just a relic waiting to be claimed. Deploy the boarding teams, he ordered. Steel-skinned dropships broke away from the Keth fleet, soaring toward the silent station. The lead ship, piloted by a veteran named Racker, latched onto the Bastion's docking ring. The airlock hissed as it forced its way open. The Keth warriors, clad in heavy armor, raised their weapons and marched into the darkness. Inside, the station was a tomb. The corridors stretched endlessly, lined with dust-coated consoles and flickering emergency lights. Some sections were still powered, humming with residual energy. Others lay in frozen darkness. The Keth spread out, their clawed feet clanking against the metal floor as they moved through the station. "Atmosphere is thin but breathable," reported one of the scouts. "Gravity generators still functional." "Scan for hostiles," Racker ordered. His visor's HUD displayed no movement, no heat signatures. Nothing. The Keth pressed forward, mapping out the Bastion's interior. They found old battle damage, walls riddled with holes, scorch marks from plasma fire. Yet no bodies, no skeletons, no sign of what had become of the last defenders. It was as if they had simply vanished. "Control center is ahead," barked one of the engineers. "If we get the main power online, we can." A light flickered overhead, then another. A deep mechanical hum rumbled through the walls, like the station itself had inhaled after centuries of stillness. The Keth froze. "Did someone touch something?" Racker demanded. "No, sir," the engineer stammered. "It's doing this on its own." Then came the first whisper. Soft, distorted. Just a flicker in their comms. Words, barely recognizable, spoken in an ancient human tongue. Racker frowned. "Repeat that transmission." "Commander, it didn't come from us." The whisper grew louder. A static-laced voice, layered with multiple tones, weaving in and out of their radio signals. "You should not be here." The lights above them surged, flickering wildly. The station groaned, metal creaking, as if something immense had stirred in its depths. A scout near the back of the group screamed. The Keth spun around, weapons raised, but the corridor was empty. The scout was gone. His rifle clattered to the floor, his helmet rolling to a stop at Racker's feet. The Bastion had awakened, and it was watching them. Silence fell over the Keth boarding party. The only sound was the faint hum of the station's ancient power systems struggling to stay online. Commander Racker's breathing was heavy inside his helmet, his twin hearts hammering against his ribs. "Where is Troken?" One of the soldiers rasped, his voice laced with unease. No one answered. The scout was gone. His rifle lay where he had stood just moments before. No blood, no body, just gone. Racker stomped forward, lifting the fallen rifle and scanning the corridor. His visor displayed nothing, no heat signatures, no movement, but his instincts screamed otherwise. Something was here, watching, waiting. "Fan out. Find him," he barked. The soldiers obeyed, but they moved cautiously now, weapons raised, scanning every shadow. The station groaned, as if shifting beneath their feet, and the emergency lights flickered again. Then the whispers returned. This time, they weren't just in the comms. They were in the air around them. Disembodied voices, layered upon each other, speaking in an ancient human dialect. Racker's suit eye struggled to translate, piecing together fragmented words. "Leave this place. This is not your war. You are not welcome. "Commander, we need tow." The corridor lights surged blindingly bright for a split second. Then darkness. The soldiers activated their helmet lights, beams cutting through the gloom. A cold mist had begun to seep from the vents, swirling around their legs like ghostly tendrils. And then they saw it. At the far end of the corridor, where the metal walls disappeared into darkness, something moved. A shape, humanoid, clad in ancient battle armor. Its helmet was cracked, its visor flickering between darkness and a burning red glow. It stood motionless, like a statue. Then it took a step forward. "Identify yourself." Racker growled, raising his rifle. The other soldiers followed, weapons locking onto the figure. It did not answer. Another step. Then another. The Keth opened fire. Energy bolts ripped through the corridor, scorching the walls. The figure flickered, as if caught between realities. The shots passed through harmlessly, impacting the bulkhead behind it. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. "Cease fire," Racker barked. A soldier near the back turned, his breathing ragged. "Commander, I think we should." A hand, glowing, ethereal, shaped like a human gauntlet, reached through the wall and gripped his helmet. He screamed. The others barely had time to react before he was yanked backward, vanishing into the metal bulkhead as if the wall had swallowed him whole. His weapon clattered to the floor. His screams faded into static. Panic surged through the remaining soldiers. "Fall back," Racker ordered, his voice edged with fury. They turned to retreat, but the corridor ahead had changed. Where there had been an open passageway, there was now only cold steel. The station had sealed them in. And then, the security monitors flickered to life. The grainy footage showed a squad of human soldiers. Their armor bore the insignia of the old Terran Defense Forces. They stood perfectly still, unmoving, watching. Then, as one, they turned their heads toward the Keth. The screen crackled. A distorted voice filled the comms. "You are not the first." The monitors went dark. The Keth had come seeking a fortress. Instead, they had walked into a graveyard where the dead still patrolled. And they were next. The air inside the Forsaken Bastion grew heavy, thick with something unnatural. The emergency lights flickered erratically, casting shifting shadows along the corridor walls. Commander Racker steadied his breathing, gripping his plasma rifle as he turned toward his remaining soldiers. "Regroup," he snarled. "We are not prey. We are Keth. We fight." The soldiers closed ranks, their weapons raised, but their eyes betrayed fear. Two warriors had already vanished, one into the darkness, the other seemingly swallowed by the very walls of the station. And the phantoms, they weren't just shadows. They were intelligent, watching, calculating. A soldier to Racker's left twitched violently, slamming his hands against his helmet. "Commander, my visor." The soldier's body stiffened as his HUD flooded with distorted images, flickering human faces, mouths moving in silent screams, eyes burning like dying stars. His breathing turned ragged, erratic. "Private." Racker stepped forward cautiously. The soldier suddenly turned, rifle raised. Racker's instincts took over. He knocked the barrel away, just as the plasma bolt discharged, searing into the bulkhead. The soldier convulsed, dropping to his knees as his armor's servos spasmed. His helmet hissed as something inside overloaded, sparks flying from the seams. Then, without warning, he slumped forward, silent, lifeless. The Keth took a cautious step toward their fallen comrade. Then his helmet cracked open. A ghostly, translucent hand, human in shape, but pulsing with digital distortion, rose from inside the dead soldier's suit. It grasped at the air, flickering between existence and nothingness. And then, as if pulled by an unseen force, it was yanked back inside the armor. The visor of the fallen Keth's helmet flickered, then glowed a deep blood red. The body jerked unnaturally, metal groaning as its limbs twitched. Then it stood up, Racker fired first. The plasma bolt struck center mass, but instead of burning through, it rippled, like striking the surface of water. The possessed Keth turned its head toward him in an eerie mechanical motion, and then it charged. The corridor erupted into chaos. The possessed soldier moved with inhuman speed, closing the gap in a blink. A second shot slammed into its shoulder, sending a pulse of static through the air. But it didn't slow. It lunged at the nearest warrior, gripping his helmet with both hands. Sparks erupted as the suit's power systems failed, the soldier's body going rigid. Then, like the others before him, he vanished, his form collapsing into a mist of blue energy, as if his very essence had been consumed. "Fall back," Racker bellowed, his voice edged with fury and disbelief. The squad retreated down the corridor, but the station was shifting around them. Doors slammed shut, bulkheads reconfigured, trapping them like rats in a maze. The Forsaken Bastion wasn't just haunted, it was alive. From the darkness, more figures emerged. Not just one, not two, but dozens. Human warriors clad in old Terran battle armor, their bodies flickering between spectral light and digital distortion. Their visors glowed an unnatural red, their movements eerily synchronized. A voice crackled through the comms, layered and distorted, as if spoken by many voices at once. "You are intruders. This war is over. Leave." Racker clenched his jaw. This was no simple malfunctioning eye, no lingering ghosts. These were the last defenders of the Bastion, and they had never stopped fighting. The Keth warriors sprinted down the flickering corridors of the Forsaken Bastion, their heavy boots pounding against the metal floor. The walls seemed to close in around them, shifting and twisting like a living entity. Doors that had been open mere moments ago were now sealed shut, while others led to passages that hadn't been there before. The station was herding them, directing them like prey. Commander Racker's twin hearts thundered in his chest. He had fought in over a dozen planetary campaigns, torn through enemy strongholds, and watched cities burn beneath his fleet's bombardment. But this was something else. This was not war. This was judgment. "Keep moving," he barked. The squad reached an intersection, and Racker turned to the engineer, Corvus, whose trembling hands hovered over his wrist display. "Find us a way out. Now." Corvus scanned rapidly. "The docking bay is sealed. No external signals are transmitting." He swallowed. "It's as if the station is deciding whether we're allowed to leave." A chilling realization settled over the group. They weren't fighting an enemy. They were prisoners. The emergency lights flickered again, plunging the corridor into half-darkness. The temperature dropped sharply. Frost formed along the bulkheads, and their breath turned to mist. Then came the whispers, dozens of voices murmuring in an ancient human tongue, overlapping, unintelligible, but filled with unmistakable intent. "Something's coming," one of the soldiers hissed. A deep mechanical hum resonated through the floor. The Keth turned as a bulkhead behind them hissed open. Beyond it was a long, shadowed hallway, lined with towering figures. Rows of human war machines. Battle-damaged exosuits, once worn by the Terran elite, stood like statues, some missing limbs, others riddled with plasma scars. Their armor, though rusted and worn, still bore the insignia of the old Terran Defense Force. Then the visors flickered to life. A dozen crimson-red optics blazed in the darkness. The suits moved. One of the Keth fired instinctively, a plasma bolt slamming into the nearest exosuit. It absorbed the hit without flinching. Then, with a mechanical hiss, the suit's servos roared to life. It turned its head toward them, slowly, deliberately. Then it charged. The first exosuit moved with terrifying speed, covering the distance in seconds. A massive gauntlet seized a Keth soldier by the throat, lifting him off the ground. Sparks erupted as the soldier's armor short-circuited, his body convulsing violently. A terrible, static-laced scream filled the comms before his signal flatlined. The exosuit tossed the lifeless body aside like discarded scrap. "Open fire," Rakor roared. Energy bolts filled the corridor, slamming into the advancing phantoms. Some staggered, their flickering forms distorting as though caught between two realities. But none of them fell. The exosuits waded forward, unstoppable, relentless. A second Keth screamed as his weapon suddenly turned against him, his rifle snapping upward and firing directly into his own visor. His body dropped, the weapon still clutched in his hands. Corvus panicked, slamming his gauntlet into the nearest console. "I'm overriding the security grid." The station's lights pulsed. An automated voice, cold and emotionless, echoed through the halls. Unauthorized access detected. Security measures engaged. The walls came alive. Defense turrets, once thought long dead, dropped from the ceilings, their targeting systems whirring. Energy cannons unfolded from the bulkheads, and they all pointed at the Keth. A harsh burst of static flooded the comms. Then, a single clear voice, a voice that did not belong to the living. "You do not belong here." The first turret fired. A plasma bolt tore through one of the soldiers, vaporizing him instantly. The corridor erupted into chaos, with Keth warriors diving for cover, caught between the relentless phantoms and the station's newly reawakened defenses. Commander Rakor's mind raced. They had no way out. The docking bay was sealed. Their weapons were useless. The Bastion was no longer just a derelict relic. It was an execution chamber, and the ghosts of its defenders were still at war. The corridor erupted into a storm of plasma fire and shrieking alarms. The automated turrets swept their barrels across the Keth warriors, unleashing precise, lethal volleys of energy. At the same time, the phantom exosuits pressed forward with mechanical determination, their flickering bodies warping between the physical and the spectral. Commander Rakor ducked behind a half-melted console as a turret's blast incinerated a soldier beside him. The Keth had fought countless foes, rival empires, rogue machines, even planetary monstrosities, but never had they faced an enemy that refused to die. "We can't fight both," Corvus shouted, desperately trying to access the station's systems. Sparks flew from his wrist console, and he let out a frustrated snarl. "The security grid is locked. The AI, it's rewriting itself." Rakor turned and fired at the closest exosuit. The plasma bolt hit dead center, causing the figure to flicker violently, but it didn't fall. Instead, it tilted its head toward him in a slow, unsettling motion. Then, without a sound, it vanished only to reappear right in front of him. Rakor barely had time to react before the phantom's gauntlet shot forward. It grabbed his rifle and pulled. The weapon phased through its flickering grip, and a pulse of freezing energy surged up Rakor's arm. His armor's servos locked, and for a terrifying moment, he couldn't move. Then the phantom whispered, "You will never leave." Rakor snarled and wrenched himself free, rolling backward as a turret's bolt tore through the air where he had stood. His armor rebooted, and he scrambled behind cover. A scream rang out as another Keth warrior was dragged into the shadows, his visor flashing red before his signal cut out. "We need to move, now," Rakor bellowed. Corvus' eyes widened as his scanner beeped frantically. "There's a maintenance shaft behind that bulkhead. If I can override it, we might be able to reach the station's core." Rakor didn't hesitate. "Do it." Corvus sprinted toward the panel, working furiously. The other soldiers lay down covering fire, but their shots passed harmlessly through the flickering exosuits. The turrets, however, did not distinguish between friend or foe. One automated gun swiveled and unleashed a barrage on a phantom, causing it to flicker wildly and collapse into a mist of static. "That's it," Rakor growled. "Use the turrets against them." The Keth shifted tactics. Instead of firing at the ghosts, they focused their weapons on the station's defense grid. Explosions ripped through the hallway as turrets were struck, some redirecting their fire, cutting down both Keth and spectral defenders alike. Corvus let out a triumphant shout. "Doors open. Go, go." The bulkhead groaned as it slid open, revealing a dark maintenance shaft leading downward. One by one, The surviving Keth rushed inside. Racker held the rear, unloading one last shot before slamming the door shut behind him. For a moment, there was silence. Then the whispers returned, seeping through the metal. "You run, but you will not escape." Racker turned to Corvus. "Where does this shaft lead?" Corvus hesitated, then muttered, "The Bastion's central AI core." Racker exhaled sharply. If the station itself was the enemy, then there was only one way to win this battle. They had to rip out its heart. The maintenance shaft stretched downward into darkness, its cold metal walls damp with condensation. The air was thick, heavy, as if the Bastion itself were breathing. Every movement echoed unnaturally, distorting into whispers that weren't their own. Commander Racker led the way, gripping the ladder's rungs tightly. The remaining Keth followed, their once proud battle formation now reduced to a desperate crawl into the station's bowels. Corvus descended last, his scanner flickering erratically as he tried to map their path. "Almost there," he muttered. "The AI core chamber is just below." A violent tremor shook the shaft. "Hold on," Racker barked. Metal groaned, and suddenly the ladder snapped. The entire section beneath them gave way, sending Corvus and another soldier plummeting into the abyss. Racker barely had time to react before his boots slipped. He twisted midair, catching the edge of a ledge and hanging on by his fingertips. Below, the sound of Corvus' armor scraping against metal was followed by a sickening crack. "Corvus, report," Racker shouted. For a moment, there was silence. Then a pained, shuddering breath came through the comms. I'm alive. My leg, not so much." The other soldier had not been so lucky. His signal was gone. Racker pulled himself onto the ledge, helping the remaining Keth down before activating his visor's light. Below them, Corvus lay in a crumpled heap near a massive circular blast door. His scanner flickered wildly as he clutched his mangled leg. "This is it," he wheezed. "The AI core is beyond this door." Racker motioned for his men to secure the perimeter. "Get that door open." Corvus gritted his teeth, linking his console to the station's control systems. The panel sparked violently, resisting his override attempts. The Bastion was fighting him. And then, the door opened on its own. A deep hiss filled the air as the metal slab slid apart, revealing a chamber bathed in pulsating crimson light. The AI core loomed in the center, a towering crystalline structure wrapped in coils of decayed wiring and flickering holoprojections. Strange symbols, remnants of old Terran programming, scrolled across its surface. But what truly unnerved them were the figures surrounding it. Phantom warriors, dozens of them, stood motionless, their red visors fixed upon the intruders. Unlike the exosuits from before, these beings weren't just flickering distortions. They were fully formed, clad in ancient Terran battle armor, their features barely concealed by translucent light. Then one of them stepped forward. Its armor was different, darker, adorned with the markings of a commander. The moment it moved, the others reacted in perfect unison, their heads snapping toward the Keth as one. Racker raised his rifle, but the Phantom Commander spoke first. "You should not have come here." The voice was layered, overlapping with countless others. It was not one soldier speaking. It was the entire Bastion. Corvus gasped as his console flashed a final warning. "Commander," he whispered, "I just accessed the core logs. These phantoms, they aren't echoes." Racker's eyes narrowed. "Then what are they?" Corvus swallowed hard. "They're still alive." The Phantom Commander took another step forward, and the Bastion sealed the door behind them. The heavy blast door behind them slammed shut, sealing the Keth inside the AI core chamber. The crimson glow pulsed like a dying star, casting eerie shadows against the ancient machinery. The Phantom warriors remained still, their hollow visors locked onto the intruders. Commander Racker steadied his rifle. He had no doubt they were surrounded, outmatched, and trapped in a battlefield where the enemy controlled everything. But the Keth did not kneel. The Phantom Commander took another step forward. Unlike the others, its form was clearer, more solid. It wore battle-worn Terran armor, its plating scarred by ancient wars. A faded insignia was barely visible on its chest. TDF 117. The Old Terran Defense Force. You are invaders. The Phantom's voice reverberated through the chamber, layered with echoes of 1,000 voices. This station is not yours to desecrate. Racker clenched his jaw. This station is dead. You are nothing but ghosts clinging to a war long lost. The commander's visor flared. The air around them shuddered. We are not dead. Corvus, still clutching his broken leg, stared at his wrist console in horror. He's telling the truth. His voice trembled. These aren't just AI-controlled echoes. They're neural patterns. They're still active. The Bastion didn't let them die. It trapped them. Racker's stomach twisted. The ghosts of the Forsaken Bastion weren't remnants. They were prisoners. The Phantom Commander slowly raised its arm. The moment it did, the others moved as one. The air hummed with unseen energy as the Phantoms surrounded the Keth, forming an unbreakable perimeter. You will not leave. The first attack came without warning. A Phantom warrior lunged forward, its flickering form passing through a Keth soldier before solidifying behind him. The warrior froze mid-movement, his visor flickering red. Then, without a sound, he turned his weapon on his own squad. Racker reacted instantly, knocking the rifle away before the soldier could fire. But it was too late. His comrade was already lost, his body overtaken by the same eerie red glow that filled the Phantom's visors. They're infecting us. One of the remaining Keth shouted, backing away. Corvus frantically tapped into the Bastion systems, his fingers trembling. Commander, if we overload the AI core, it might sever the link keeping them here. Racker didn't hesitate. Do it. Corvus' hands flew over his console. The AI core reacted violently, its crystal surface pulsing as if in protest. Warning alarms blared, and the station itself trembled. The Phantoms surged forward. Racker fired his weapon point-blank into the closest one. The plasma shot connected, and for the first time, the Phantom staggered. The AI core's connection was weakening. Hold them off. Racker roared. We end this now. The Phantom Commander's voice boomed through the chamber. You would destroy us. Racker's gaze was like steel. No, warrior. I'm freeing you. Corvus slammed the final command. The AI core screamed, and the station erupted into chaos. A deafening scream erupted from the AI core, an unholy mixture of distorted voices and static that rattled the very walls of the Bastion. The crimson glow pulsing from the crystalline structure flared, casting long, jagged shadows. The entire station shook, its ancient systems rejecting the command to self-destruct. The Phantom warriors reeled, their visors flickering erratically. Some clutched their heads as if in agony, their spectral forms wavering. But the Phantom Commander, TDF 117, remained standing, his hollow gaze fixed on Racker. You do not understand what you have done. Racker leveled his rifle. I understand perfectly. Corvus gritted his teeth as his console sparked violently. The AI core is resisting the overload. The Bastion's entire system is trying to stabilize. The Phantoms lunged. A Keth warrior screamed as his body twisted unnaturally, the red glow seeping into his armor. Another was ripped from the ground and hurled against the chamber wall, his skull cracking on impact. Hold them back. Racker roared, firing into the shifting figures. Plasma rounds tore through the air, striking the Phantoms mid-charge. Some faltered, their forms scattering into mist, but others pressed forward, utterly relentless. Corvus fought against time, his fingers racing over his console. Come on, just one more. Got it. The AI core exploded. A shockwave of pure energy surged outward, blasting across the chamber. The Phantoms froze mid-attack, their flickering bodies convulsing as the crimson light in their visors dimmed. Then, one by one, they began to dissolve. The phantom warriors stumbled, their movements no longer precise, no longer controlled. Some turned to look at one another, as if waking from a long nightmare. Their forms shimmered, breaking apart into fragments of light and shadow. TDF 117 took a slow step forward. His form was failing, his once solid armor now fractured, crumbling like ancient stone. "You have freed us," he said, his voice no longer layered with 1,000 others. It was his own. Racker met his gaze. "That was the only option you never had, wasn't it?" The Phantom Commander nodded once. His visor flickered a final time before his form collapsed into dust. The remaining phantoms followed. One by one, the warriors of the Forsaken Bastion faded, their suffering at last coming to an end. And then, silence. The station's alarms died. The crimson glow vanished. The cold, oppressive presence that had haunted them since they first arrived was gone. Racker exhaled, his grip tightening around his rifle. Corvus, still slumped against the console, let out a weak chuckle. "I can't believe we survived that." Racker surveyed the ruined chamber, the scattered remnants of a forgotten war. Barely. A low hum filled the air, and then, for the first time in centuries, the station's automated systems flickered to life. The docking bay was unlocked. A final message scrolled across Corvus' console. TDF 117 Final Command. Station Lo Siki de Oliven Dies in GGT. The Bastion, once a prison of the damned, was now empty. Racker turned toward his remaining soldiers. "We're leaving. Now." As the Keth made their way back to the docking bay, the station behind them was silent. No more whispers, no more phantoms. The Forsaken Bastion had finally found peace. And for the first time in history, the Keth had witnessed what made humanity truly terrifying. Not their strength, not their weapons, but their refusal to surrender, even in death.